Welcome. I bid you welcome, John Clouser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, coming to you from my music corner of the world. Welcome to the last episode of Mortification Monday, that little series where I've been talking about the Jesus metal band from Australia, Mortification, led by its bass player and singer and songwriter, Mr. Steve Rowe. This has been a series I have wanted to do for a long time. So, just to give you kind of a recap. So, this is a band that I discovered back in 1998 after I became a Christian. And I was introduced to them by a friend who had the Live Planetarium album. And that's essentially where I got started for me. I discovered this band that was very thrashy, very heavy, and they were singing about Jesus, which in basically my infancy of my Christian faith and my Christian walk was something I really wanted to cling on to. Um and I just had no idea that these guys would really become to be one of my favorite bands of all time, and they really are. um since the mid 80s, Steve Rowe has been leading this charge of the band Mortification that would start off in Light Force. It would eventually transition into Mortification. The main goal was to share the good news of Jesus Christ. That was the ultimate goal for Steve, and he wanted to do it through thrash metal, through death metal, through groove metal, through whatever metal genre. He just felt like there was so many different influences, power metal. There was a bunch of different influences that came along, and it reached, and he tried to be different with just about every album. And hopefully you got that idea as you went through the series with me. Um, but yes, just like in Hebrews 13:8 says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That was the message of Mortification, bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And in the mid 90s, when Steve had his health issues with leukemia, Steve trusted that God was going to pull him through. Okay. And he would then go on to write and sing about that in a lot of his later albums. From their Triumph of Mercy is a great example of that. Um, he's had a number of other health issues throughout the course of the 2000s. And, he's at a point where, not going into any detail, he really could use your thoughts and prayers. Okay. He's not near death, but he's certainly not in the kind of shape that he would like to be able to be in. They've not been able to perform in probably about 8 or 10 years due to a stroke that he had suffered. That was really what caused it all. Um, but the impact that Steve and the band would have on me is something I'll always be grateful for. Um, it's, as I said at the beginning, this is a series I have wanted to do for the longest of times. And, if you haven't figured it out, unabashedly all about Jesus. These songs dealt with spiritual warfare, spiritual battles. Um, Sometimes it tackled big pharma. There was certain biblical stories it would tell, but it was always pointing to Jesus, and that was the message of Mortification. Um, if anything, I hope that this series has turned some people on to this band. And if you're not a Christian, but you like the music, but you have questions, reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk about it. Um, so the last thing I'm going to talk about in this series is there was a few things that some guys in the band had done as side projects. One of them was Wonrowe Vision, uh, this album here called Mission Invincible, and then you would have this one called Pictures of the Past, Present, and Future, and finally, Two-Headed Monster. These albums are basically how I would describe them as very lo-fi, garagey rock, very straight ahead, traditional rock and roll, maybe a little bit of a heavy metal thrown in there, some thrash stuff, but for the most part, these are very simplistic songs. There's a couple tracks where they do kind of dive back into the old Light Force era, but just very and maybe not so much harsh vocal. There is Steve trying to do more singing vocals, but it's just got this lo-fi feel that really kind of sounds pretty cool. I kind of really dig that. Um, and so there's a good quality to those songs. It's usually got Lincoln Bowen on guitar, uh, drums between Andrew Esnoof, and I think on Two-Headed Monster is Adam Zaffarisi. Um, One thing that I was a part of for a short time before basically things kind of disbanded a little bit was a thing called Infiltration Squad, and what that was kind of like a fan club, and something that I had gotten was basically something from Rowe Productions, which was just a compilation albums of a lot of the bands that they were trying to do on their that they had on their label. So you had bands like Beheadeth and Harbinger, Ethereal Scourge, Cybergrind, Metanoia, Vomith, Grave Forsaken, Psychoma, Groms, Shlyak, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Callus, of course, an old Life Force track, Noise Gate, Frank's Enemy, Crimson Thorn, and of course, Wonrowe Vision. Really cool album to check out. This was a like a compilation album put out in 2017. This was, I think the idea here was a little bit of a fundraiser, really for Steve. So there's 19 different tracks here, encompassing quite a number of albums here. Really good album called Shades of Death here, the best of Mortification. Um, the last thing I want to talk about is Mick Jelinic. He had a wonderful run in Mortification and still keeps in touch with Steve today. And he has a band called Terraphobia. And this was the first album I had picked up by them called Evolution. He has three or four other releases prior to this, very tough to come by. I have looked on Discogs and they're a little pricey, but very, I would love to hear those someday. But anyway, he had this album. This came out in 2011. He would do an album of called The Mort Years, and it's called Terrification. This features 7 songs that he co-wrote with Steve. So it's basically just kind of his take with the vocals and things of that nature. And then this last album, this one came out in, I can't see the date. I want to say 2022. An album called Rise. This basically Terraphobia was very muscular, very heavy thrash metal. Oh my goodness, it was heavy. Very harsh vocal. Mick basically plays all the instruments himself, programmed a lot of the most of the drums, which really, when you listen to them, they don't really sound programmed. They really sound like they're live drums, but they're very strong albums. I highly recommend checking them out. Um, Again, a lot of the information that I learned about Steve and I tried to present in a lot of these albums came from this book here called Metal Missionary, the Steve Rowe story, written by Vic Campbell, with a lot of stuff here from Steve. Again, I don't know if this is, you can probably find this on eBay, but I believe you can also find this on iBooks on Apple, like if you have Apple products and things like that. Not totally sure where else you can find this, but it's really a very worthwhile book to check out. So I highly recommend this book. Really good. All in all, as I said before, if you never heard of Mortification and you followed along with this series and you got turned on to this band, whether you're a Christ follower or not, reach out to me. Let me know what you thought about the band. And if you're not a Christ follower, if you're not a Christian, and you have questions, again, I don't know if I can give you the answers. I'm far from a perfect Christian. I certainly have my temptations and my vices and things of that nature. A lot of that's behind me. I have a lot of CDs, and that tends to be a bit of a problem for me. But I would be happy to talk to you. I'd be happy to message with you and go back and forth with you. So, in closing, there's really only two words that I can really say about this Mortification series, and it's just the title of one of their most known songs: God rules. Simple as that. John Clouser, Johnny Metal the Metal Dad, saying, I've hoped you enjoyed Mortification Monday, this series coming to you from a music corner of the world. God rules, everybody. We'll see you soon.